Hi, this is Mark Sobowitz from the Hub Studios in Atascadero, live with a clarion voice. Good morning. This is Mark Sobowitz with the clarion voice, and today we have the pleasure of once again interviewing our friend Patrick Erlandson, who is the founder of FatherCon, an organization that is trying to prevent human trafficking by getting men involved in ways that will help stem the tide. Patrick, thank you so much for being here again.
It's always a pleasure, Mark. Really, so grateful to be here.
Well, we are glad to do it. Patrick, the reason we're interviewing you today, among other reasons, is because you have a movie presentation that's coming out soon in about a little more than a month. I believe on November 16th, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. There's a little advertising. And so tell us a little bit about the nature of the film and what it's talking about.
Okay. FatherCon was we really want to go upstream and start looking at what are the causes, what are the causal forces that are allowing children to be trafficked at the numbers that they are today, and also how people are becoming the buyers, they're becoming the exploiters, and those are our children, those are people coming out of our homes. So it's like, how do we start to look at that? And one of the clear targeted demographics in our country, especially, but also around the world, are children who are displaced from their homes, are foster children. I think it was 80% of all of the children or young people who get picked up that are being prostituted in the state of California were in some way, through the system, had come through the foster care system. And so that's kind of a critical link, and to understand that these are children that have a massive target on their backs to traffickers and exploiters and predators, because they already feel adrift. I mean, so many of these kids they don't know if they're loved or lovable. They don't know that they have any kind of worth or value to the world. The rates of foster children graduating from high school and ever going to college is extremely low. So we decided to really kind of highlight that and look at the foster care system, and look at foster care also as a means for families who feel drawn to care for a child who doesn't have the kind of parental environment and loving environment to seriously consider becoming foster families. So the film is Foster Boy. That's the feature film, which is based on a true story of a young man who was drawn into the foster system, but he kept getting placed with extremely abusive homes, and it turned out that was intentional, because they have privatized foster care in some states. We don't in California, but just like the private prisons. So he's in that privatized system, and the company just keeps making money from each placement. So they would place him into dangerous homes knowingly in order to then replace him and get more money. It's incredible. Yeah,
we've talked in the past about the warning sign, so to speak, of recognizing whether or not young ladies are being, trafficked. And if you see them out in the public, maybe you can keep your eyes open for that kind of, dynamic. What's the difference as far as children are concerned, or foster children? What can somebody look for in order to determine whether or not the child is actually being trafficked?
That's a little bit more difficult. I mean, if you're talking about someone that you would see on the streets, I mean, if you see that someone clearly looks underage, California is a hot mess as far as these things go now, because if you're under 18, you basically can't be arrested. You can be picked up by the police, and they can try to get you either back home or somewhere, but you're not going to be arrested, which the law is really well intentioned, and it does do good in that you're not criminalizing a victim, especially a minor victim. but it's also kind of removed law enforcement's ability to arrest someone and give them a chance to be away from their trafficker, and then possibly, open up about what's happening to them. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there in some of our laws now recently passed in California as well. But I think as far as recognizing, I mean, you see someone who's underage, they're dressed inappropriately. I mean, here where I was doing men standing against trafficking, we had girls with no underwear on and just wearing a T-shirt standing on the streets as elementary school children walked by and on their way to school. And I mean, so there were clear signs that these weren't women who are.
Well, yeah, they're not so obvious though sometimes, because you don't know. But how is
control of someone? It's like where they're obviously not making decisions for themselves.
Right.
Someone else is making all the decisions for them. Those are kind of those signs. For me, it's like my concern is that parents and guardians, caregivers recognize the signs leading up to someone being exploited within their own homes, because that's where to me the prevention has to shift to our kids making relationships online that are leading them to become exploited.
So are parents not doing a good enough job in doing that? I mean, as far as because they can't, in my way of thinking, they can't watch their kids 24/7.
No.
And so how do parents, monitor the activities of their children to prevent this from happening?
Well, I think they do need to have, if you have devices on your home computers and phone, I mean, you can have it so you can see what your children are doing, what websites they're going to. I mean, the number one protection is prioritizing a trust relationship with your kids. I mean, that is just because you can't monitor everything and you can't control them when they go to school and what
Right.
they're being exposed to. But if you prioritize like having conversations with your children so that they're accustomed to talking to you about silly things and significant things. And so when you need to have a critical conversation about pornography, for example, they already know that, dad talks to me, so they know that that's part of your relationship and your dynamic. We have too few fathers that are actually listening to their kids and really, really investing the time to get to know them. And what that does is if a kid enters a situation or has exposed to something where they don't really know what to do, if they don't feel that their dad or their mom really knows them, that's not the person they're going to go to for advice. They're going to go to someone that they feel really understands them. And
This
that's
is more like gang type of thing, where they don't feel loved in their own family, and the gang sort of embraces them, and so they have a sense of comfort in that respect. So that's how they get diverted to that kind of activity.
Well, it doesn't have to be that dramatic as far as gangs. We recently showed, so this upcoming film is Foster Boy, and I do want to talk a little bit more about kids in the spotlight too, because they're great. But the last film we did was Our Kids Online, and at the end we had the film. We had this amazing panel that discussed, more nuanced details after the panel discussion, and then we were just wrapping up, and a girl, she was in her early 20s, stood up in the very back of the theater. And just said, can I share something? And then, so it turns out when she was 14, her parents went through a divorce, which is a common story. If you go through a divorce, you got to be hyper vigilant because your kids are taking that ways that they may not be telling you. But in her case, she really loved her dad. The dad walked out on the family on Mother's Day. Pretty traumatic, but she had met this guy online at the age of 14, and she would run home from school so she could talk to him. She had built a relationship with him for 1 year. He was a little bit older than her. He was, I think, 18. She was 14. But 1 year of just interacting with this boy who totally won her heart. And so he ended up becoming the replacement for the dad that had walked out. He became the focus of her world. And after 1 year, they decided to meet, which turned into a nightmare. I mean, she was just brutally raped, and that shattered her in ways that made her question everything about herself. So she engaged in absolutely self-destructive behavior from that point, tried to commit suicide several times. People stepped in right at a moment that kept her from passing away. But it was this exclamation mark at the end of our evening that just this is kind of a reality, is that kids are meeting someone online, and that person can very quickly become their world and their comfort and the person that they go to when anything comes up in their life. And it should be the parent. It has just got to be a parent. And it's so, that's.
There's so many pressures on parents, though. There are parents that both parents work, so the kid is left, on their own for a period of time. But it depends on the situation. There are so many different issues that are coming up, which create these problems. Let me ask you something about not only is there an online problem, with dealing with what you were just describing, but what about the schools? Are the schools, do you interact with the schools to get them involved as well? Because that's an influence that is like, 5 or 6 hours a day for some kids. I mean, in the age group that we're talking about. So how do the schools interact in this respect?
Well, it's case by case. California basically said schools should have some element of human trafficking education within the school, but it's not enforced, and it's not like required. They said that this should be happening. There should be programs in the schools, but it's basically up to the principals, the school principals. And so a lot of the principals were just like, we're not going to talk about sex. We're not going to talk about that stuff. We don't have a problem like that here. That's been the response of a number of school principals. They just don't want to start the conversation. So it really takes parents telling the school that they want this. It takes pressure on PTAs. There's a lot of resistance. They just don't want people talking about this stuff to their kids. And I get that. Like you don't want something being brought up to your kid that may then influence them to move in a certain direction. But there needs to be kind of an age-appropriate introduction of the threats that face children today within a school environment. And so there are a lot of organizations that do come out and do presentations. There's curriculums that have been created for schools, but the principal has to accept it.
Well, that's kind of arbitrary. It is. I mean, if the principal does not have the moral background to step up and say we need to educate our kids, then the kids are out of luck. And what bothers me is the fact that there are more instances of sexual orientation classes, for example, to talk about identity, and then you have this problem, which is a lot more serious because of what you've been describing. So I don't get it. I mean, is human trafficking such a issue that people just want to stay away from it or something in the schools or parents? I don't know. I don't get it.
Well, one of the problems is that people feel like, oh, I watched some TV show and they talked about human trafficking, so now I know what it is. So there's this kind of sense that like, okay, I know that there's something bad out there, and I get it, when they really don't get it. And right. So there's like, well, I don't need to hear any more about that. And so that's kind of what's happened with the rise in awareness, especially through media. There comes this feeling like, yeah, I don't need any more. I get it. I know it's bad. I just went to the doctor a couple of days ago, and he knows what I do, and he was just kind of like, man, I got a 3-year-old, and he goes, I don't know if I want to talk to you. He goes, I know I need to know, but I don't want to know. And that was his response. And there's an awful lot of people like that, where it's a surface, a very superficial understanding of the problem is enough. They think, and that's where the tragedy comes in. And I think your point about fathers being busy and parents, two people working jobs, it's just, if you care about your kids, you've got to prioritize these things. We're not living in the same age as 20 years ago.
Right.
It's another world, and if you don't really prioritize the kind of parent your kids need you to be, they're going to have problems. I mean, it's not a question of if anymore, but when. They're going to get exposed to stuff, and if you're not there for them, someone else will be.
That's the crux of it right there. Because I mean, I always tell people that being a parent is the hardest job in the world. I don't care what it is. That's the hardest job because of what we're talking about right now, because of the influences that affect their children and all the other situations, the economic situations and things like that. Tell me, Patrick, as far as the children are concerned, is Father Khan, aside from the movie that we've been talking about, is there efforts on the part of Father Khan to reach out and communicate with parents, you know, uh, about this issue?
Oh, anytime, any place. Yesterday morning, I taught a class at a community college, a human resources class. So some of these students are going to go on to become social workers. So we did a whole presentation and introduction to them, because there are people going through the healthcare field, law enforcement, all of them. They all need to be aware of this because it's going to become a part of their future career reality. So Father Khan, we reach out anywhere we can. I gave a presentation on Saturday, then again on Monday, and then I'm here with you today. And
Right.
so our priority is disrupting things for especially fathers. But this has come up a lot recently, how much we really need to engage wives and women, because women have to also recognize the significance of fathers. And what's happened in so many cases is a guy wasn't necessarily a good husband, but he's an engaged dad. But if the wife feels hurt by her ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, whatever, then she prevents him from being with the kids, or she talks badly about the ex in front of the kids or to the kids, and then you're creating another toxic situation for the kids where they're being deprived of the father that they really need. And so we really need to educate women as well. That's why FatherCon was never like a men's organization. It's fathers, which implies by nature there's a mother and also children.
Okay.
But we really need to reach everyone. And this is really the thing. It's our message is really, we have to prioritize who we are to our kids, because they're deciding who they are, and they're deciding how they feel about other people, and whether they have hope or no hope, whether they feel valuable or not valuable. That's coming from us, and us, and especially fathers.
Okay. If somebody wanted to get more information or want to participate in Father Khan's efforts to prevent this problem from, escalating even more, how would somebody do that? Uh, do they go to your website, fatherkhan.org, or are there other ways that people
They can
can
reach out to me directly. I mean, if they have questions, my email address is patrick@father-con.org. So
Okay.
they can reach out to me there through the website. Have just gotten a new administrator, so we're going to have more updates more frequently to the website, and have more and more really, really important, relevant information on there. Our upcoming annual conference is going to be February 11th. And
Okay. And where is that going to be?
it's going to be in Downey. It's going to be at Warren High School again in Downey.
Okay.
Our keynote speaker is Father Greg Boyle, who founded Homeboy Industries. It's the world's largest gang intervention and restoration organization in the world. But it's really leading gang members out of the gangs and to a meaningful life. But it's really done by treating someone as if they're irreplaceably valuable. So what Father Boyle has started is just an approach towards gang members where you kind of see through the tattoos, you see through the past history, and you see this person is made in the image of God. This person has irreplaceable value. And so he's created a way of treating people in such a way that then, man, I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy that's really valuable and irreplaceable. I don't want to be this guy that's out, looking to sell drugs or women or whatever. So I'm really excited about having him come and speak. It's just an amazing man and what he's accomplished.
Well, I must admit, in all transparency, that before we talked to Susan Carter of Freedom Calling here in the local area, and interviewing you, I really wasn't that informed, to be honest with you, about the problem. And I have a new respect for people who are stepping up and wanting to prevent the problem. But I think the key to our conversation today is that parents need to step up. They need to step up, and they need to get involved in the efforts to prevent their children from being sucked into this black hole, as it were, of human trafficking. And I really appreciate, more so than I ever did, about what you're doing and what the other organizations are. And people need to be informed about this problem, because it is there. It's not going to go away unless somebody steps up and does something to prevent it in one way or another. And I must appreciate what you do. And I'm always glad to have you on Clarion Voice. And the invitation is open at all times. So, folks, if you want to get in contact with Patrick, just go to his email, patrick@father-con.org, and he'll be glad to respond to you. And then also, if you would like, there is a monthly newsletter, I believe. That
There is. You can sign up for that. On the website, they can sign up for that.
Okay.
And this upcoming film on November 16th, that's going to be our last one for this year, but it's a film series that we're doing on topics related to prevention and areas of need.
And where is that going to be shown? Is that going to be shown in Southern California, correct?
It's the Look Dine-In Theater in Downey. We just had such support from city government, law enforcement. Everyone in Downey has been very supportive. So it's become kind of a little bit of a hub for us right now. But we do want to expand these. So there's other areas that want to have the film screenings. This one is Foster Boys is on the foster, what's happened within the foster care system. But there's an organization called Kids in the Spotlight, which was started about 11 years ago to really take foster youth who really see themselves as having no hope and no future, connecting them to a script writer, a professional director from Hollywood. They do the casting. They write a story. A lot of times it's their personal story of what they've experienced in the foster care system. And then they make a really high quality film. So we're showing actually a 10-minute film made by foster youth before Foster Boy this evening. And then Tai Ji and her husband, who's an actor, is going to be on the panel. And it's an incredible panel this time. So anyone who's in the area around Los Angeles, if you can come November 16th at 6 p.m. to the Look Dine-In Theater in Downey.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, for being with us again. Like I said, the invitation is open at any time, and we hope that you'll come back again and continue informing people about what Father Con does and the problem of human trafficking. And so I hope that you'll like and share this video with someone who needs to know about the problem of human trafficking in particular. And we certainly hope that you'll get involved. If you're a parent, please get involved with your kids and let them know that they are cared for and they don't need to go into that black hole. This is Mark Sobowitz from the Hub Studios in Atascadero with a Clarion Voice.